Hi guys, I'm going to go on in this vein with some symptoms and things. One thing I want to touch base on is like with my grandmother, she became like almost anorexic. She didn't eat. She always ate very little to begin with. I was emaciated when they had locked me up at the psych ward. There's a difference between not eating a lot and starting in anorexia. You know, oftentimes you think, especially with me, sometimes I battled some weight gain when I was very stressed. Because often my eating was messed with. When I was home, my mother could be very abusive with meals, very abusive with forcing us to eat rancid, moldy food. She just wasn't in the right state of mind. She would, we'd get groceries, she'd leave meat out on the counter, things weren't cooked properly. Again, I'm not going to get into her story, but suffice to say, I developed an eating disorder, certainly around some of the sexual abuse in my life when I was younger. So oftentimes there's issues with touch, there's issues with body issues. I started reading Fat as a Feminist issue, and I started reading books about eating disorders. So by the time I got to college, I had some understanding, and I overcome an eating disorder. And it was from exercising, mindful eating. I joined a gym right away. I don't know if you guys remember, you ladies remember Spa Lady, but that was back in the day with us working girls going to work. You could go to Spa Lady. And working out and being at a gym was a target of the abuse way back then. Women weren't supposed to work out with weights. You weren't supposed to go to the gym. I mean, I took so much harassment from so many people for so long. I was one of the first women in the city to work out with weights. There was only a couple of us. Very, very healthy. It's been very, very demoralizing not to be able to take care of my health. Certainly when I was put on the street, I wasn't given health insurance. It's been very difficult to try to eat properly in these kind of situations. So my grandmother became very emaciated. I had to when they locked me up because I didn't know what was going on. So my eating has fluctuated horribly. I was vegetarian. I haven't been able to do that. I haven't been able to take care of my health, which compounds some of this. These agencies refuse to let women talk about sexual abuse. They refused at the jail when these counselors come in, and basically what we did was color these domestic violence counselors. At the psych ward, lots of women had been sexually abused or had it in their history. My sister-in-law did, I did, and I believe my grandmother did. The sexual harassment was just constant. I mean, women then couldn't vote. You couldn't have property, which was really devastating to her. She couldn't have her property. So the idea of sexual abuse and not being able to talk about it, certainly when it relates to feminist issues, to issues with women, is extreme. And it's still the same way. They kept telling me, well, you're an alcoholic. I've never been alcoholic. They roofied me a number of times. They drugged me. I was sprayed in the face numerous times with this. They'd make jokes about this ketamine, all this other stuff. And I won't, use this video to talk about being roofied, having things tainted. We can get more into that, this sabotage and retaliation. But the lack of awareness about sexual abuse in people's history that needs to be addressed. I mean, I had moved on. It was a part of my growing up, and right now it's been very difficult to revisit some of these memories, some of these things that are a joke to these people that impact your life. That you think, oh, that's not a big deal, that's just growing up, or these father figures that do things inappropriately. And this is why the statute of limitations with sexual abuse, I believe there should be no statute of limitations, because it oftentimes takes a survivor a long time to parse and go through some of these memories. If you have old trauma, which is what I did, I had some trauma surrounding these things. I had went on with my life. And for the most part, I had overcome that. And to walk into a courtroom going through a divorce and having people just blast me with all this stuff that happened to me as a child was I was like, where is this coming from? What is this about? Why are we talking about my mother's inventory. My mother's boyfriends, or her half, my half family, or people that involved with some of the sexual harassment where I worked, even with my in-laws, with extended family. So talking about sexual abuse shouldn't be all the shame on the victim. And this is what I wanted to do with my privilege and this video. This video series. I'd like to edit some of these. They do go on a little bit, but we'll slowly get there, hopefully, if I can get my life turned around, if these people would leave me alone and I can move forward with my life. And it's a big part of women who are incarcerated. The numbers have exploded because the idea was, well, in a domestic violence situation, now we can arrest the woman. Occasionally, yes, women, are involved in this. And I don't want to veer off here too much, as the abuse, but I'm not going to get into that, but this is why I say that most of the men I knew that are involved in this situation need to take responsibility for what they were doing. I was not the domestic abuser. In a lot of situations, women are the targets of this, or have been sexually abused, or have been sexually harassed, or even more heinous things, raped and different things. And which is what I was told my marriage was at this point. So that was shocking. I was in shock. And none of these agencies really give it the consideration and handle it in the sensitive manner that it should be. They're too busy calling you crazy. They're too busy telling you you're a drunk. They're too busy telling you, somebody said, well, why do you bring up prostitution? Because if you don't get your assets, what do you think a woman's going to do? Most men worry about being humiliated. Women worry about being killed. You're in these unsafe apartments. You can't work, or you're prevented from work. You can't get your assets. You can't get transportation. You can't get your car. You're dealing with the shock of another sexual assault. You're dealing with the shock of more retaliation. So we'll get into some of this, and we'll go forward to if I can, to continue to talk about some of these pressing relevant issues that came up after the Me Too movement, and really, really need more victim services and more understanding and more believing the victim and supporting the victim, rather than constantly supporting and doing things for the perpetrator of this, so it all continues. I'm a little over, guys, so be safe. Take care.